Hi everyone, and welcome to Watercolors with Jaylene. Thank you for joining me today. With February right around the corner, that does mean Valentine's Day is going to be here before we know it. So I wanted to do a couple fun little projects today with the Valentine's Day theme in mind. And I just wanted to take a quick minute before we get started to ask you to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Hit the little bell, and that way you will be notified when I have new videos coming out. So for this first project, it's just some fun hearts with a lot of doodles on them, and you can get as creative as you want. And I will start by going over the supply list. So I do have my watercolor paper, and then of course my clean water and a blotting towel, my Winsor & Newton 24 cake paint set. And then I have two brushes that I'll be using. The first one is a number 14 round brush, and then the next one is a number 8 round brush. And then I have a couple of markers. I have my Sharpie fine point, and then I also have my Micron. This is an 05 nib, and that's in black also. They're both permanent, and that's important. Then I do have my white Jelly Roll pen for making some doodles. And for the colors that I'm using, which you can switch it up to whatever color palette you enjoy, but for these, this heart, I'm using some purple and then some permanent rose. For this heart, I do have my lemon yellow, orange, cadmium orange, and also a little burnt sienna is in there to make it a little bit darker. And then for this little guy, I have my cobalt blue, and then also my emerald green. And so to get started, I'll set this aside and grab a piece of paper. And so I will just take my Sharpie fine point. Now, if you feel more comfortable drawing your hearts in pencil and then going over them with a marker, that's perfectly fine. I'm just going to start right off with the marker. All hands in for this, I guess. So we want to draw 3 hearts, preferably different sizes anyway. And we want them to be just a little whimsical. So we want like a lot of little loop-de-loops. And you can really draw them any way that you want, whatever trips your trigger, I guess you could say. All right, so there's my second, and then my little guy down below. Okay, so there is the basic start of the 3 hearts. And of course, we'll be adding some details to them as we go along. So what I'm going to do is start with my number 8 round brush. And I just want to go ahead and paint in some water, because when I go to put my paints down, I want them to blend really nice on here. I'm not going to, be blending different colors on my palette and then putting them on here. I'm just going to put them on here and let them blend on their own. So when we do this, we do want to make sure that as we put the colors down, it's pretty heavy. As you know, with watercolor paints, as they dry, they do have a tendency to lighten up. So we're going to want them to be fairly dark just because we're going to be using the white gel pen, and we want that to pop. And so with this is the purple, and I believe this is called Purple Lake, so it's not like a violet, it is actually a purple. All right, so I have that blending around, and then I'm going to grab some of my red. I don't clean my brush off or anything. I just jump right in there. All right, so I'm trying to do this so that so that you can see in the camera. I want it to stay in focus. And so, as I mentioned, this is where we'll be doing the blending, is right in the heart itself. All right, so I have these coming down, and it's just the 2 colors, okay, the Purple Lake and then the red. So I'm going to go back over and just add a little bit more paint so that as it dries, it does stay nice and dark. And then over here, I'm adding some more of the red. And I'm going to bring that down into the purple just a little bit and let them create their own shade. All right. And I think I want to grab just a little more of the purple. I'm going to just turn this a little bit so that I don't smear anything unintentionally. All right, so that is the first heart. Quick, simple, right? Now we'll move on to the next one. I'll clean my brush off real good. And I'm just using the number 8 round brush for this as well. The larger brush will come into play with more of the background a little later on in the video. So I've put water in the heart, and now I'm going to start with some of the orange. This is, let's see, I'm using it's a cadmium orange. And as I mentioned, you can go ahead and use any colors that you like. If you have a favorite color palette, have at it. If you want to create a certain look that's a little bit different, then that could be fun too. So now I'm grabbing, it's a little bit darker. This is more of a orangish red. It's a cadmium, I think it's called cadmium hue red. And I'll bring that up a little bit. And now I want to grab a little bit of the yellow. And I don't do a huge area of yellow, just a little bit, because to do the doodles on that, it'll have to be by black marker because the white gel pen just won't show up. It's too light. But I do like to have a little bit of yellow in there because it just adds a little bit of pop. And so this is the burnt sienna. And I'm bringing that in just to add a little bit of darkness. And there's still quite a bit of a orangish, reddish hue to it. So it blends in very nicely. Okay. All right, so we're gonna let these just kind of blend together. And you can see how nicely those, the lake purple and the red are blending together. It just makes such a nice flow. Okay, so we'll leave that to dry a little bit. Now we'll go on to the blue and the green. Let me grab some of the blue, and this is the cobalt blue that I'm using. And we'll just start, oops, see, I just made a mistake. I'll tell you what I didn't do if you didn't already catch it. I did not go through and add water to this. So I'm doing that now. See, this is how you can save a little mistake. There. So now that I've added the water to the entire heart, we can go back in and start adding some of this, some of the color, and it'll blend very nicely. See, that's the reason for adding the water, is for the blending, which I think I had mentioned that earlier. Let's just take the green up into the blue a little bit to let that do its own little blending. I'm going to add just a little bit of the blue over here. Okay. All right, so now that we have the colors, the base colors of the 3 hearts, we're going to want to let this dry really well. It needs to be totally dry before we do start adding some of the fun doodles. So we'll set this aside, and for the sake of this video, I had actually already went ahead and painted some hearts on another piece of paper, and they are totally dry. So I'm going to set my paintbrush aside and my blotting paper. And then for this is where the fun comes in, because now we're going to start adding doodles to the different hearts. And as I had mentioned earlier, that you can add whatever kind of fun little things, if you like to do little hearts, little stars, squiggle marks, dots. I'm huge with the dots. And we'll be adding not only in black, but also with white gel pen. So with these, I do like to start on the outside and just kind of add a little bit to the outside. And here I'm just doing kind of like a little outline, but not all the way around, and some squiggle marks. And just kind of put in a couple of little circles. Over here we'll add an extra line with some squiggles. And then of course the dots. We all love the dots. They can be everywhere. Can never ever have too many, ever. So I want to turn this just a little bit because I want to put an extra line on the inside as well. All right, so I'm just going to kind of doodle along here, and you can follow me and get some ideas. You can add squiggles and wiggles and all kinds of fun stuff wherever you want. This is where we get creative. You could even do a few of these ahead of time and, you know, have them around, and when you feel like doodling, then pull them out and complete them at that time. You don't have to do everything all at once. All right, and so while I'm doing this, I just kind of wanted to mention also, a lot of times you'll hear people say, you know, on their, as they're going through some of their watercolor paintings, that if you want to start out with a less expensive watercolor paper, you could do that. And that's fine, but my belief is, because I have used less expensive paper, I've used more expensive paper, so I have found a nice medium with the Arches paper that I use, and it is 130 pound cold press for most of my artwork. And I find that this works nice, and it is affordable without being over the top. I've tried using less expensive, and I find that the quality of my work is less, and I'm not as happy with it. So I want to be happy with what I'm painting, and this is where I have found that this works well for me. So, you know, as you're out there experimenting, I'm going to turn this just a little bit. You know, and the same with your watercolors. You know, if there are certain ones that you feel work a little bit nicer, and there's some great watercolor paints out there. All right, and so as I had mentioned on this one, because it is a little bit lighter up in this area, the white gel pen is not going to show very well. So any of my little doodles that I want up in this area, I am making sure that I do those with the black marker. And we'll put, let's put just a couple little stars in this one. Oh, kind of like a star anyway. All right, and then down here, let's do some dots. I just love my dots everywhere. And I think if you've watched some of my previous videos, you'll know that I absolutely love doing the little dots. Everybody has their thing, right? Okay. So with this one, because it is rather dark, I'm not going to do a whole lot with the black on the inside. I will be using more of the white gel pen in there. Okay, so I'm going to grab that now. And as I had mentioned earlier, if you're enjoying my video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and that way you will be able to follow any of my new videos that come out. I do try and put something out at least once a week. And I do some short videos from time to time. Those are always a lot of fun to make. All right. And let's put just some lines throughout here. And I'm going to turn this a little bit. And of course we need more dots. And see how fun this is, and how how nice it's starting to look with both the black and the white doodles on these. Here's some little diamonds. And let's get just a couple more dots in there. I think I'll put a diamond or two in this one as well. Okay, and then over here in the darker area, I do want to add a little bit of white. I'll just stay away from that yellow area, I think. Put a couple stars in there. And with the gel pen, if you haven't used gel pens very often, with a gel pen, if you stay very light as you're drawing, it works better. It comes out much better. If you push hard on it, it has a tendency to be very light. Just a little note there for you. Okay, you can see just some squiggles and wiggles, right? Okay, so that pretty much, that's where I'm going to stop with it. If you wanted to add more, actually I always do this. I say I'm stopping and then I find someplace else that I want to add something. Okay, so I am done with all of the little doodles on this. So now what I want to do is just to add a little bit of a background color. So to do that, I'm going to be using some of the permanent rose. However, I'm going to be mixing it with Chinese white to make it a very muted color. And then also, and this is where my large brush, the number 14 brush, comes into play. And I do have a lot of water on my brush. So I'm going to be using the permanent rose, but I'm also going to be using a little bit of the orange as well, so that we have a couple of different colors in our background. Oh, there's a little something on the brush. And keeping it very, very, very light, and then just go around the edges of the hearts. We don't want to touch the heart at all because we don't want blending happening here, okay? And so here's a little bit of the orange. And I do have a lot of water on my brush with very little paint. And we're just going to kind of go around very, very quickly, because we just want to add a little bit of, you know, background color to soften it up a little bit. And I kind of turn my paper as I do this just so that I don't smear into anything. And you'll see I keep dipping my water in, or my brush into the water to keep it, you know, keep a lot of water on the brush. All right, so that pretty much does it for this. And look at how cute that turned out. And you see how quick and easy it was, and it's so much fun. You can get as creative as you want, and as I mentioned, you can use different colors. With the doodles, you can use different little doodles, and just create your own. You can make some really fun cards, gift tags, and you know, just have fun with it. Valentine's is a fun holiday. Okay, so the next one is going to be even quicker. It's going to be a little quicker. It's going to be just as easy. And so basically this is just a heart, and I've done some splatter on it. And I'm really using two colors. I'm using the permanent rose with a bit of the Chinese white for the background, and then just the permanent rose for the heart itself and for the splatter. And then I take my Sharpie marker and just kind of outline the heart itself to make it stand out or pop a little bit. So I'm going to set this aside. I'll set that up there. And grab my piece of paper. And now on this one, I am using my large, whoops, I just hit my light. I'm using my large number 14 brush with this. And then I'm grabbing some of the permanent rose, which I think that's actually out of the view of the camera, and I do apologize for that, but I don't have enough room for everything. So I am mixing some of my Chinese white with the permanent rose and making it just a really soft, I like to call it a sherbet tone, and I'm grabbing some more water. So I do have a lot of water and a little paint on my brush. And then I just want to go through and I'm going to roughly paint in a rectangle. And I'm not making sure that it's, you know, straight lines or anything. I'm just, there again, this is just for the background. And so let me kind of turn that. All right, so I have that painted in, and then we are going to want to make sure that this background dries very well so that it doesn't blend with the red as we put the red heart on there. We want the stark contrast of the two. So we'll let this dry very well. And once again, for the sake of this video, I had done one previously. Okay, so this one is totally dry. Okay, so now I am going back to my number 8 round brush, and with this I am dipping it into the permanent rose, which I wish I could get this into the camera, but I know it isn't visible. So I have quite a bit of water on my brush, and then also just the permanent rose, and I want, you know, the belly of the brush to be full with paint. So you can see that there is an awful lot of paint on that brush. So what we do to get this, the different thicknesses, is how hard you push down on the brush. And so to do that, I'll start out, and you can see I'm just barely touching it, and then pushing down, and then lifting up and off the paper a little, and then hard. So you can see it's, you know, you just lift up and then push down, and you can do it at your own pace. You may even want to practice a little bit. So now I'm pushing down and bringing it up and pushing down. And there we go. That's the heart. You can see how quick and easy this one is too, right? That's the fun thing about these. They are very quick and easy. So, you know, you can sit down for a couple of hours, get a couple cards done, a few designs, and you'll be all set for the holiday. And these are great for birthdays or anything. I'm just saying Valentine's Day because that is the next holiday that's going to be here in just a couple of weeks. So now we're going to, and it is still a little bit wet. You can see that, you know, it's not totally dry, and that's okay. But now I'm going to go ahead and just do some splatters on here. And I'm mixing a lot of water with some of the same color, the permanent rose, and then I'm going to just kind of do some splatters on here. And you can do as much or as little with the splatters as you want. And I think that'll be pretty good for this one. If you wanted to do the splatters in a different color, that would be kind of cool also. I didn't give that a try, but that could be cool. Maybe purple or different shade of pink, possibly. So for this, we do want to make sure that it's somewhat dry before we start with the Sharpie. And I'm just going to take a paper towel and kind of lift some of these splatters, just kind of lighten them up. Not all of them, but a few here and there, so that they have different depths of color in the splatter, if that makes any sense. Okay, so now this isn't dry. It probably should be totally dry, but we're going to see how this works. So I'm going to, with my Sharpie marker, I'm going to go around the edge and just on the outside, and areas that it does look pretty wet, I'm kind of staying away from them. And then just kind of going down through to do a little bit of an outline, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Now I will say wherever there's a gap in the lines, in the red lines, I make sure that I don't put the marker highlight there. I just kind of leave that alone. Okay, so you can see this actually is working pretty well, even though it's not 100% dry. I'm just kind of rushing through it for the sake of this video, but normally I would let that dry. Okay, so that's it for the heart. And you can see that took all of what, 2 minutes to do the entire thing. Once the background, the light background is dry, it takes like 2 minutes to do that. You can whip through these things, and you know, if you're having a little party, you may want to put people's names in the middle. If there's a little saying, you might want to add that, and you can always do that with a Sharpie marker. And just get creative with it and have a lot of fun. So on that note, that's it for today. It's just the 2 quick designs, and I'm going to pull this one back out so you can take a peek at that. And there is all of them. My sample that I had originally, the one that I really did do, and then this one that's still a little bit wet that I'm waiting for that to dry. So I would like to thank you for joining me today, and until next time, ciao for now.